Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you my review of The Lost Boys, a horror comedy from 1987, which I, for some reason, haven't really checked out myself. So here we are to finally talk about it. And the 80s and the late 80s when this came out, it was definitely a big time for horror flicks. I believe Pumpkinhead came out in 87 too, didn't it? And then he had Hellraiser within a year or two after that. This was also during the time of some of the Friday and Nightmare movies, and so it came out at a prime time for this kind of thing. I'm a fan of vampires. I'm a fan of horror with comedy in it when it's done right, or when it's when it just feels like it's a good fit. And my brother's one actually sort of pushed me to watch this one. And again, it's another one of those weird movies where I've never watched it, but people would assume I would, because I call myself a horror fan, but yet I constantly find myself embarrassed that I haven't seen certain ones that come up. The Lost Boys. It was directed by Joel Schumacher, who would later go on to almost entirely be known for his films such as Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, particularly Batman and Robin. But this is, of course, a totally different movie. Before I get into how I thought of it, or what I thought of it, I should say, let me just explain to you the premise. I have the kind of a double feature of this on the first direct-to-DVD sequel right here, which I will watch at some point. Probably not too soon, though, just because I sort of want to mix it up for October. And again, this is continuing the month of horror movie reviews I'm doing. Horror movies are a big part of my life. They're a big passion of mine. And October came along and just sort of clicked that, I really need to push and make horror movies more of a presence on my channel. And I think I'm doing that. I don't need to read the back, I don't think, but, it's basically about this small family, a divorced mother and her two sons. They only moved to this small town. I believe it looks like it's in, California, Santa Carla, California. And they move into, their grandpa's, who's a bit off, but it seems like he has a pretty good idea of what's going on by the end of the movie, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. They basically moved to this town in California. It's kind of like a surfer sort of partying area, like around the beach and everything. And Michael, played by Jason Patric, he ends up, running into these, Lost Boys, basically this, sort of a gang or, group. They seem just to be sort of like rebels, just messing stuff up at night. But of course, they're vampires. After he takes an interest in a girl named Star, he sort of starts getting involved with them more so than he, planned on. And of course, these Lost Boys turn out to be, vampires. That's the kicker there. Of course, the main vampire we see in the movie is played by Kiefer Sutherland. He plays David. A lot of people know him from 24. He's currently on Designated Survivor, I think, but he's done tons of other stuff. I like this movie. I know I probably don't like it as much as some people do, but I do think it was a pretty solid horror flick. Especially when you just relax in the fact that it's meant to be a horror comedy. It's a lot of horror movies from the 80s and 90s now are going to be really cheesy, whether they're meant to be then or not. But this one, it meant to have that nature to it, so you can't really fault them for that. And some of the comedy and the timing is pretty good, especially with Sam, played by Corey Haim, who's Michael's younger brother in the movie. When he's having a conversation with Star at a certain point, Sam's hiding under the covers and just yelling at his brother, randomly interrupting them as they're talking, as he knows what he is eventually. Because as Michael gets more integrated with the Lost Boys, he ends up, essentially becoming a vampire himself. Like I said, I liked it. I don't think it was perfect, but I can definitely see why it has its place, It definitely has a certain, type of, style to it and energy. It's also one of those I think I would have liked even more if I seen it when I was younger. And that's only because I'm so desensitized to any kind of horror now, just because of how many I've seen. So I feel like if I watched this when I was first watching like some of the Nightmare movies or something, and it might have like affected me more, and maybe it was stuck in my mind to a higher degree or something. But that's not really the movie's fault. I've just seen a lot now. But I still thought it was fun. I think Kiefer Sutherland does a good job. He definitely sells a charismatic sort of vampire leader type. Although there's apparently a head vampire, who we find out the identity of towards the end of the movie. Corey Feldman is also in this movie. He's one of two brothers running this comic book shop, and they're masquerading as these vampire hunters. Which is definitely one of the more over the top or comedic parts of the movie, because they're talking like these macho voices and stuff like that, trying to be badasses and everything. But I thought they were pretty entertaining too. The Frog Brothers. Corey Feldman plays Edgar. Corey Feldman, of course, is in a lot of horror movies. He had a bit part in Gremlins. He, of course, was in Friday the 13th Part 4 and 5. And he goes on to later star in the 2 direct-to-DVD sequels of The Lost Boys. So I liked his presence here. Now, as far as like the vampire effects go, they weren't bad. As far as like the makeup. I probably should have had a picture ready, but they're not like my favorite vampire designs, I guess, when they go into that mode. And of course, the budget was kind of obvious, and they didn't want to film them, flying around too often, except for the fight towards the end of the movie. But also made it kind of suspenseful the way they shot it, although of course a little cheesy. When they would swoop down and grab their victims and everything. But I thought the designs were alright. They sort of remind you of like how vampires look on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Although I don't think they're quite as exaggerated as they are in the face as they are on Buffy. I could be wrong. But either way, I think Buffy has acknowledged, being influenced by the Lost Boys. So either way, it makes sense. I do like the final fight, by the way, because the mother, she ends up, sort of trying to date this, like a kinder gentleman that she, comes upon, that she's working, that she gets a job with. But of course, he turns out to be the head vampire, Max. And one of the funnier scenes in the movie is when, Sam and the Frog Brothers have dinner with the mother and Max. And of course, they try to test all these different theories to sort of, prove that he's a vampire, like water and garlic and everything. But it turns out because he was already invited into their home, that doesn't work on him and this version of vampires, I suppose. But despite Max sort of being the head vampire, apparently, I think it was definitely David who stole the show on that end. Kiefer Sutherland's vampire. And what's kind of cool about it is because like whenever a vampire dies in this movie, they sort of explode or implode, right? And there's a decent amount of blood in this, especially when that happens. But when David is impaled by Michael at the end, Michael also ends up turning into a vampire, like I said, and it's actually kind of a cool fight scene for what it is. But when David is impaled by Michael at the end, he doesn't explode like the others, and you later see Max, sort of, checking to see if he's still alive. But they didn't really address it in the movie, but apparently David is actually alive. They meant to include a part that would have actually brought it up, but I don't know, there's some kind of like comic continuation or something that filled in the gap. But I was reading IMDb, and apparently David actually survived, and it's even implied that he went on to create like the head vampire in one of the DVD sequels or something. Which is kind of cool that they actually kept him alive. Although I wish there would have been a scene of him like escaping or something. So it's kind of a cool little tidbit that sort of makes you rethink, the final confrontation and everything. So I had a good time with Lost Boys, and like I said, the grandpa, who seems like the Wikipedia says it eccentric, he just, he's sort of that guy who seems just to be really enjoying his life, at the tail end, kind of, and everything. But it turns out he was well aware of vampires. As he says at the end, after he crashes the car into the house to help, kill Max, at the end he says, "One thing about living in Santa Clara, I never could stomach all the damn vampires." He just casually brings it up, it's just, he didn't even think to warn him. It just is what it is. It's just something he's used to sort of handling, or that he's routinely bothered by. So I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, I thought Lost Boys was a good time. Not one of my all-time favorites, but like I said, I probably would have liked it even more if I seen it when I was first watching horror flicks. But I see it now and I still like it. I still see its value. And if I had to rate Lost Boys, I would rate it about a B minus. Probably a solid B, honestly. So yeah, not bad at all. Solid. And I think the performances were all around pretty good. I talked about Kiefer Sutherland, but I thought Jason Patric played Michael as fine as well. Bordering on a little bit bland, but I actually ended up liking him. And like I said, his chemistry with Haim, who played his younger brother, was pretty good. The mother did an alright job. Of course, Feldman is fittingly a bit much. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Alright, so you guys can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time. Got a good amount of videos coming up. I just have to sort of find the time to watch everything. But, I'll definitely be continuing my horror movie reviews through the month of October here and there. So yeah, peace.